morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Today's platform, as you know, if you look at our website, is called Warrior to Revolutionary, My Story, presented by our daughter-in-law, Brandi Fishman, who is the director of the Zefer Foundation. It's a story about a personal journey involving disability, acceptance, perception, and advocacy. Brandi will also discuss her work with the Zefer Foundation and her opening of Breaking Grounds, a coffee house with a mission. Brandi Fishman is the president and founder of the Zefer Foundation, to which she brings many years' experience heading charitable organizations. She is an active community volunteer working for charities like the Covenant House, Autism Speaks, the Ronald McDonald House. Brandi also organizes several annual and monthly community events, including sensory-friendly cookies and milk with Santa, trips to Broadway for children with autism to see sensory-friendly Broadway performances, family fun nights, parent support groups, and special needs ice cream socials. Brandi lives in Medford, New Jersey with her husband Craig, who is our son, and our wonderful granddaughter Zoe. Of the many awards Brandi has received, one is from, you may have seen this issue if you live in South Jersey especially, recent South Jersey magazine Best of the Best, in which Brandi's Breaking Grounds coffee shop was recognized as the best in the area. And just a quote from the article, situated in the eclectic and creative haven of Mill Race Village, this cafe is serving up fresh roasted coffee, gourmet hot chocolate, a full menu of espresso, fruit smoothies, and nutritious meals that range from bagels and veggie burgers to panini. But in addition to filling stomachs, and most importantly, this cafe's mission is also filling hearts as it provides employment opportunities for those with developmental disabilities. Much more than delicious coffee and food is served at Breaking Grounds. Astounding artwork is produced and sold and displayed, all created by talented artists with disabilities. As Brandi has said many times, this is a place for everybody to be supported and accepted. Okay. Everyone needs to have a job and to experience the dignity that goes along with work. Breaking Grounds and the Zefer Foundation exist to provide these opportunities. In addition, Brandi has been recognized as Woman of the Year by South Jersey Magazine in a spring issue, and she has been, been nominated by the Burlington County Times for having the best cafe, smoothies, and employment program. She has received many accolades and much recognition in the community as a dedicated advocate for those with special needs. And it's all because of her unflagging hard work and dedication. But more than anything, because of her love for her beautiful special daughter, Zoe. I'm going to turn the program over to our exceptional daughter-in-law, Brandi Fishman, but just before I do that, I personally want to thank the Ethical Society for splitting today's collection with the Zefer Foundation. Your generosity will be greatly appreciated. And now, I turn it over to Brandi Fishman.
So thank you for having me today, guys. It's an honor to speak here with you today and to tell my personal story for the first time. So I've decided to start at the beginning and then lighten it up a little bit from there. So the year my daughter was diagnosed in 2011, Autism Speaks, which is a very popular advocacy organization, was running a PSA at that time, which is a public service announcement. It was all over the internet, and it was used to draw attention to the needs of the families and individuals with autism, and of course to raise funds. So while we were going through the process of getting my daughter diagnosed, I was doing a lot of research, and the message, the social message at that time, was that autism was a horrible tragedy. It was something that should be avoided at all costs. And the PSA that really stuck with me, they interviewed 4 different mothers from New York. One of the mothers was Bob and Susan Wright, their daughter, and their grandson, of course, had autism. And one of the mothers was talking about the lack of services available in the school. And she was talking in front of her daughter that had autism with the interviewer. And she said in front of her child that it was preferable to her to drive her child off of the George Washington Bridge than to send her daughter to that school. And that was a really powerful and painful message. And it created a lot of fear. And at that time, there really were no positive messages. The only success story that was available that you could look up was, of course, Temple Grandin and her success. And what a rarity that was. So, in March of 2011, when my daughter was 3 years and 2 months old, we finally made our way to Dr. Copeland's office. And Dr. Copeland was an amazing doctor. He was a neurodevelopmental pediatrician. Of course, my husband, who is an amazing researcher, found him once we suspected that Zoe had more than a global developmental delay at work. So Craig found him, and 2 weeks later, we were in with Tema. And he had very strict guidelines for how you were to come to his office. He wanted to see both parents, even if they were separated, and you had to bring another caregiver because he wanted to be able to examine the child and then speak with the parents privately. So it was a very scary day. We drove out with Tema. Tema came with us. We were pretty quiet in the car ride out to the main line. And 4 hours later, it was a very long examination, Dr. Copeland brought us back into his office and told us that it was, in his opinion, that Zoe did in fact have autism spectrum disorder. I don't think that we were shocked, but it was still a lot to take in, because you kind of got that autism stamp. And it was like, wow, what do we go from here? What is our life going to look like? And how are we going to pick up the pieces from this extremely difficult day? And I felt at that time the essence of my soul spilling out onto the floor. I didn't know really who to feel bad for first. Do I feel bad for my daughter and what her life is going to look like? Our family, my husband. There was just so many emotions really to be sorted out. And Dr. Copeland was really wonderful. We saw him for many years until he retired. And I wish that any family that has a differently wired child had the opportunity to see Dr. Copeland. He just had such an amazing bedside manner. He was like a grandfather, kind of, a very wise, supportive grandfather. And he really drove home the importance of mental health and how the mental health of the parents impact the child and their outcome. So I will always be eternally grateful to the time that we had with Dr. Copeland and his guidance. So shortly after Zoe was diagnosed, we found an autism program for her. So that summer, she started at the Burlington County Special Services School District, had a wonderful autism program called the Pioneer Autism Sensory Center. So we were now in a self-contained classroom in a big school with a lot of other kids that had multiple disabilities. And it was a shocker. Honestly, prior to my daughter's diagnosis, I didn't know much about those schools and how they operated and that many of them even existed. So So it was quite an undertaking. I can tell you in the world of special education, there are more anagrams and abbreviations than NASA scientists have. I mean, you really learn in a whole other language. So once Craig and I enrolled Zoe into that school, I had all of this time on my hands during the day. I had been quite the helicopter mother, taking Zoe to every therapist that was available. She had outpatient occupational therapy and speech therapy, an ABA home program. So I was quite restless when Zoe was in school for a full day. So I decided I had to learn everything I could about special education. I took online training classes. I found a pilot program that was funded by the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles in collaboration with the Council of Parents and Attorneys and Advocates. And they put together an online advocacy training class that was just short of a year long. And it was amazing. So I'm actually one of the few certified advocates in the country from this training class. And it was wonderful and very enlightening. I decided that if I was going to be a special needs mom, I was going to be the best possible special needs mom that I could be. So education was paramount. So I completed my advocacy course, and then I really felt like I needed to know more about the school itself. I had to infiltrate the school. I had to know what was happening with my daughter every day because she couldn't tell me. So I realized that the school was in great need for iPads. That year we purchased an iPad for my daughter, and she was extremely motivated by the screen. So we were able to get her to engage in preschool type apps. And we were amazed to discover that she has a wonderful receptive language. She knew all of her colors, all of her animals, all of the reading that we had been doing with her over the years. She had absorbed it all. So we were really elated to see how she engaged with this iPad. And I couldn't believe at an autism school, because it's a public school, they couldn't find the funds to get these iPads in the classroom. And it really struck me, again, how unlevel the playing field is for these children, depending on what kind of insurance your parents have, or how much disposable income your parents have. And I felt terrible that the other children at Zoe's school didn't have access to this, perhaps because their parents couldn't afford to buy them an iPad. So I decided to take matters into my own hands, and that summer I created an event called iPads for Autism, which I organized at Indian Acres Farm, right around the corner from my house in Medford. And it was before I even started the PTO. I don't even think the event was insured. I just did it. I found vendors and sponsors. Of course, my family was super supportive and helpful. And we had over 2,000 guests out at the farm that day. We raised over $10,000, and we were able to put iPads in every classroom in addition to getting the Gorilla Cases insurance and an iPad card. So we did that for several years until the school had all the iPads that were necessary. So I had to be a part of the school, and once I got in there, and of course after the first iPads for Autism, I knew everybody in the school, all the case managers, the school board, and they asked me to start a PTO there. So I created the Pioneer Autism Sensory Center PTO. And it was very successful for many years, and I'm very grateful for my time for that because it built a springboard for me to start the Zefer Foundation. Without that experience, I don't think I ever would have had the courage to create my own foundation. So it was at that point I considered myself to be a warrior mom. We were all fighting the good cause together. So 2 years into having the past PTO, in 2015, I had organized a holiday luncheon for the staff. And it was really sweet. The staff were super appreciative. A lot of the parents were there. And I was talking to a parent of an older child, an older student that I knew. And her daughter was 20, and she was looking at day programs. She was trying to figure out what was going to happen with her daughter when she aged out. And at that time, shortly before then, the Department of Developmental Disabilities in the state of New Jersey had merged with Health and Senior Services. So a lot of the day programs, the day hab programs, were actually in nursing homes. And we were talking about how wildly inappropriate that was, and how the adults, when they age out of the school system, they need to be stimulated. They need to continue to learn and grow, just like we all do. Otherwise, they suffer regression. And I couldn't think of anything more upsetting than watching your child lose skills that they had worked so hard to gain for so many years. And while we were having this conversation, I talked to two other moms that were standing there that were part of the conversation. And I hadn't really allowed myself to think that much into the future. When you enter into the world of special education, you're warned constantly to only think about the next 5 years, because you could worry yourself sick and drive yourself crazy with scenarios that may never come to fruition. So I was standing there listening to this woman talk about her concerns for her daughter, at the same time talking with two other friends about how wonderful our children were doing in this program. And it was like a light bulb went off. I was like how am I going to let this happen in my child? That we have to do better. We have to ensure that our children are appropriately stimulated and that there are opportunities out there for them. And it was at that moment I turned to my good friend, and who is now a trustee with the Zefer Foundation, Erin Bertoli, and I said, Erin, we have to do something. I'm going to do something. I'm going to create a foundation that's going to continue to service this population, and we're going to do it right. And that was really the biggest part for me, is that there wouldn't be any bureaucracy like there is in a school district. We were going to lay it out in plain English. We're going to adhere to it. We now have on the Board of Trustees several behavioralists, occupational therapists, speech therapists, and we're making our own way. So that was the day that I decided to create the Zefer Foundation, to bridge the gap into adulthood. So shortly after making that statement, and then being scared to death, wondering what did I just obligate myself to, how am I going to do this, I started to try to research the needs for adults with developmental disabilities. And I was really horrified at the lack of data that is out there. They're not followed. All through the school system, they're followed in many different ways and tested and tracked. And there is very little information about what happens to these individuals after they turn 21. It's almost like they fall off the face of the earth. And during my research, I found a gentleman called Jim St. Clair. He is an adult with autism, and he is an activist. And I'm going to read you one of his quotes, which I found to be very striking. It actually stopped me in my tracks and caused me to really rethink the position of a cure and the language that we use around these individuals. So, to quote Jim St. Clair, he says, "When parents say, 'I wish my child did not have autism,' what they are really saying is, 'I wish the child that I have did not exist, and I had a different, non-autistic child instead.' Read this again. This is what we hear when you mourn over our existence. This is what we hear when you pray for a cure. That your fondest wish for us is that someday we will cease to exist, and someday a stranger that is easier to love will move in behind our faces." It's a really extreme point of view, but it stuck with me. And I think that we really have to examine how we feel about cures altogether. I think that the individuals that are differently wired engage with the life that they have, and they don't want to be cured, and they don't want to be extinct. They want to be accepted and supported and loved, like we all do, like all of our children need. So it caused me to think about illness versus identity and having membership in a culture. Individuals who are hearing impaired don't feel that they are lacking hearing. They feel that they have an identity and they have membership in a culture. which is as valid as gay culture, Latino culture, and even Jewish culture. And with that comes acceptance. So there has to be self-acceptance, family acceptance, and social acceptance. So that led me to start working on my mission statement for the Zefer Foundation. So the mission of the Zefer Foundation is to shift society's perception of individuals with developmental disabilities. And I decided that should be the first sentence, because really it's the neurotypical population that is the biggest obstacle for individuals who are differently wired. The limitations that we place on them directly correlates to the support and services that are available to them. They have to be valued in order to have a place in society, and that's something that has been severely lacking throughout history. So the second sentence is, we will accomplish this by collaborating with individuals and agencies to create unprecedented opportunities for inclusion and diversity in the areas of employment, housing, and recreation. The Zefer Foundation will provide the supports and resources necessary to create an environment that ensures true inclusion is possible in all areas of the community for all of its citizens for the betterment of society as a whole. The Zefer Foundation believes that it is our moral imperative to provide these individuals with benefits and opportunity to improve their quality of life, gain employment, and have meaningful participation in the community. I can tell you I've never poured over 5 sentences for so long in my entire life. So I decided to start with employment. Adults with developmental disabilities are grossly underemployed. And we received our nonprofit status in April of 2017 after 2 years of applications with the IRS. I wasn't sure if it was going to even happen. So we received our nonprofit status, and very shortly thereafter found a building. We stumbled upon a building in Mount Holly in the Millrace Village, which is a very quaint little historic area of town, which is a co-op. So all the buildings are available for very reasonable rent for artists and startup businesses. And we decided to make that our home for Breaking Grounds. We had no money. I think we opened the coffee shop with $6,000. It really was amazing. The entire community came together to support us and get it off the ground. And while I was working with my trustees to create an employment program, I mean, we knew what we wanted to do, but we really didn't know how we were going to go about it. How we were going to be able to support each individual and meet them where they are and make sure that they were successful and happy and able to run a business all at the same time and turn a profit. So while I was working with my trustees, and most of them come from the special education background, I was struck again by the very dehumanizing language that we use to describe these individuals. Often individuals are referred to as very low functioning, or very high functioning, or very severe. And I made it very clear in our policy that we would never use any of those terms to describe any of our employees, because I feel it's not only inaccurate, but dehumanizing. We have to be very careful about labels altogether and how we group people together. So we came up with our own language. We don't have a tier system. I decided we were just going to call everybody by their first name. So opening night at Breaking Grounds, I had 5 exceptional employees working with me. 2 other neurotypical employees were there, and all of our trustees. And we didn't have a whole lot of time for a dry run. A lot of our equipment was delivered late, as of course it always does. And we really didn't have a lot of time for training and practice runs. So I was like, okay, we're going to open up. Of course, there was a festival that night in Mount Holly. It was the Christmas tree lighting ceremony. And I was like, we're just going to give it a whirl. And it was wildly successful and a lot of fun. And we were packed until 9 o'clock. And while I was looking around the room, I noticed that all of my exceptional employees had it together. and actually get their foot in the door, that those opportunities probably would not have existed for them in the future. So I'm super proud of them, and it really warms my heart. We also participate with the local school districts in what's called vocational rehabilitation. We are certified as a community-based instruction service center, and also a selective learning environment. So we really have the coffee shop open to a very diverse group of people, and I try and keep it open in as many ways as possible. We're always looking for different ways to include more people from the community for employment or non-employment or pre-employment opportunities. Okay. So my goal is to create a direct impact in the community, in a big ripple, and to lead by example, to show people in the community that these individuals are capable of so much more than we ever thought that they could be. And in addition to discovering how capable they can be with the right supports, to really get to know them is such a gift. One of my dear friends who happens to be here today says that she comes in for soul cleansing, to come in and interact with the employees. It just, you leave with a smile on your face. It's heartwarming. Kristen Haney, who is probably our most popular employee, is an absolute ray of sunshine. She comes in with her big JoJo bow in her hair every day, and she was interviewed with me on PHL 17, and then she was featured in another article in South Jersey Magazine, and she has decided she is a superstar, and she will give out autographs if you ask her. So it's been incredibly heartwarming and cathartic to see what is possible. And I can see customers when they come in, they're a little apprehensive at first. And I've been able to watch people really come around and really get into and support what it is that we're doing there. And I really truly believe that in my little corner of the world, we are making a difference. And it's going to be better for Zoe and her peers when she ages out of school. I want Zoe to be in a community where she is valued, respected, and safe, and to have the opportunity to continue to develop relationships and friendships and learn and grow, and not be isolated and understimulated and stagnant. So this year we decided to launch the Inclusion Revolution. And essentially, the Inclusion Revolution boils down to us opening more businesses. I opened across the street from Breaking Grounds what is called the Zefer Arts Alliance. So we have a clinical art and music therapy room and an art studio for inclusion classes. And we brought on new artists to showcase their work, which is for sale at Breaking Grounds. We're also working on launching Zefer Vocational Solutions. So I've developed a team, and the goal of this team is to go out and solicit larger corporations into hiring adults with DD that are then trained and followed by us. So we're just kind of getting our feet wet in that right now, and we've been working with Liberty Lake Day Camp, training their employees on ABA basics and how to redirect differently wired kids and create more of a conducive atmosphere to fun. So we're thick into launching that. Hopefully next year we'll be able to reach out to businesses and actually start the employment program. In addition to our work in the Mill Race Village, after I opened the second business, I decided that I really had to educate all of the other merchants, because now with two businesses that are designed to employ and also service adults with DD, there's going to be more of these families in our village. So at a meeting this winter, I asked the other merchants at one of our co-op meetings on how they felt about making Mill Race Village a sensory-friendly shopping district. So they all jumped on board. We have 100% participation. We did an hour-long presentation with them, with one of my behavioralists, Shelley, who happens to be the vice president of the Zefer Foundation. So we kind of did like a disability, ABA, basic training for them, sensitivity, how to react to a parent who might be in a challenging situation in your shop with their child, and it was wildly successful. And we also armed them with sensory boxes that are on display all the counters. So there's, chewies and fidget toys and lollipops and sunglasses and earplugs. And we've really been able to create a very inclusive and accepting environment in Mill Race Village. And my hope is to take that up to High Street and eventually open businesses in other areas. So we are just getting started. So in closing, I ask you to join me and the Zefer Foundation in the inclusion revolution and to pledge to meet people with an open mind and loving kindness.